The medical term would be Ectopia Cordis, and it's just Latin for the heart being out of place. And that can happen in multiple ways. So it doesn't have to just be protruding out of the chest. It can be up in the throat. It could be somewhere else in the chest cavity. For Ryan, it is literally like where his sternum would be between his Adam's apple and his ribs, I guess you would say. And it looks to me like you take half a tennis ball or maybe even half a walnut. When he was a baby, it was much smaller. And you placed it on top of his chest, but you could see it beating, unlike a walnut or a tennis ball that's stationary. We can look and we can see his heart beating. And if you know him and you look at his shirt when he's just standing around, you can see that his shirt is moving. Yeah, so that was really different for us. These babies are about 1 in 8 million births.
Hi friends, quick story for you. I wanted to tell you about the time that I met a guy who talks to angels. The reason I met this guy is because I was sitting next to him randomly at a dinner that I bought a ticket to because it was an event with speakers and a day of networking and inspiration, and it culminated in this dinner where I ended up getting at a table with this very interesting man, and we got to talking, and I found out that he is an angel medium and that he used to be an investment banker, very successful investment banker, and he gave it all up to become a healer. He has an amazing book called Banking on Angels, which I bought immediately that night and began reading right then because of that connection. And then because we were already acquainted, I invited him to be a guest on Blessings, and he came on and he talked about this, and he was one of my most popular guests. A lot of you reached out to him and got angel card readings and healing messages and help and guidance, and he has touched so many lives. And since then, he's gotten even deeper into healing modalities and his own spiritual connection, and he's just going beyond into realms that most of us don't even know exist. His name is Neil Bakshi, and he is going to be a speaker at the Rich Thinking Conference coming up on September 6th in Philadelphia, PA. His online popularity has exploded, and he is a force of energy, the kind of person who you just look into his eyes and you are drawn to him. You know that there's something special about him because he just exudes that kind of an energy. Being in his close proximity and actually being in the room with him, not just seeing him online, is honestly life-changing. And he is only one of 7 people who you will get to hear in this life-changing experience, the Rich Thinking Conference. The whole reason I even know Neil and we've become very good friends is because I made the decision to buy a ticket to a live event. And he wasn't the only person I connected with that night. I made many other connections with many other high-profile guests, and I have had people come on the show. I've done other collaborations that you don't see. They take place behind the scenes that have enhanced my business and my personal life, all because I went to one event. I know the importance of getting together in person and cultivating that space that's like an incubator for your potential. Another speaker at our event, Chris Patterson, put it like this. He said that when you think about a battery, like the kind that you put into your remote control, you know, a AA, you've got 1 or 2 in there and they power that little remote control and they give you a signal to control your device. It's pretty magical in itself. But now think about something like a Tesla that can go from 0 to 100 miles per hour in seconds. The power of that is because there isn't just 1 or 2 little AA's in there. There are many cells, many batteries, cells all together, forming a bigger battery pack that powers that car and allows it to reach speeds that at one point you would have thought were unattainable. But because all those cells came together to create a larger, more powerful battery, more is possible. And that's what happens to you. You can come together with one person and create that small charge. Like you're the AA. You can get together with one person and work a little bit of magic, or you can come together with a whole group of people and you can make big magic happen. You can create an enormous charge. And that is where transformation takes place. So I want you to know that you are invited to the Rich Thinking Conference on September 6th, and we are getting close, but we do have a few seats left at the time of this recording. So if you act fast, you can get one of them. Or if you just want to send me a message and say, Mitzi, hold me a seat, I'm going to buy my ticket. You can go ahead and do that. I'll hold it for you, but you can go right onto the website and buy your tickets right now at richthinking.org. This is a no-brainer. A live event will change your life. I have been to several, and they have changed my life in so many ways I cannot even describe. So I want to see you there. Do not miss out on this. And now enjoy the show. Welcome back to Blessings, my friends. Here with me is Leighann Marquiss. 12 weeks into her third pregnancy, Leighann and her husband were at a routine sonogram appointment when they received some life-changing news. Their baby had an abnormal heart. He wasn't expected to live through the pregnancy, and she was encouraged to terminate it. But Leighann was not on board with termination, and the couple decided to let nature take its course. They convinced a pediatric heart specialist to help them with a plan. And when their baby did miraculously make it to birth, they had a team of professionals ready to help. The baby, Ryan, had a heart defect. But not only that, the damaged heart had developed on the outside of his chest. Leighann shares her story in her book, Showing Heart. Ryan was saved that day in 2009, and today he is 15 years old and thriving. When I think of Leighann and her family, the word resilience is the first thing to come to mind. This is going to be an amazing conversation. Welcome, Leighann.
Thank you so much for having me today.
You're welcome. All right, I'm going to ask you a big question to start. What does motherhood mean to you?
Oh my goodness. How much time do you have? What does motherhood mean to me? I think that motherhood just encapsulates nurturing children that are under your care. And for me, my goal has always been to give my kids the skill set that they need to one day launch out of my household and become contributing members of society. So when I think about that definition, I think that includes people who are figures, mother figures, can come into children's lives too. Very broad definition, but I definitely think it's somebody who's nurturing children in their care.
Yeah, I know. And I love the way you expanded the definition. I was wondering if maybe motherhood has a more kind of profound meaning to you than it might to others who haven't been through such experiences as yours. Maybe we'll find out a little bit more about that as we talk.
Yes, I'm not sure since I only have my life. I have nothing to compare it to.
That's so true. So true. So let's learn a little bit about you and your background. Where were you born?
I was born in Washington, D.C. at Providence Hospital.
Did you grow up there in that area?
I grew up in the area. So we lived in the suburbs, Maryland, just a mile or two outside of the city. And that is where my mother's OB delivered. So my older sister and I were both born in D.C.
Okay. Do you just have the one sister?
Oh, no. I am one of 7 children, believe it or not. I'm the second. So I have one older sister. I have 5 younger sisters. And then the baby was a boy. God bless his heart. So the 7th one was a boy. He is amazing and very good with his wife and kids, as you can imagine.
Wow. What's the age difference between the oldest and the youngest?
17 years.
I love a big family. What was it about growing up in a big family that you think was your most favorite thing?
Oh my goodness. Growing up in a family that big, you always have a playmate. So I'm an introvert by nature. I love my alone time, but I also love people. And maybe that's because I had so many siblings, it just forced me to be around them. Now, as an adult, I love going home. Like every holiday is a party. We have close to 30 people at least. We factor in spouses and kids and all that kind of thing. It is just, you always have a support system to rely on. It's amazing. I love my siblings.
Oh, it's a whole built-in village.
It really is. We have a text thread and it's like literally a Facebook private thread of who's done this? My kid's doing this. Or what are you doing with your flowers this year? We're often giving each other advice and feedback. I just asked them today, I did a mock-up of a kitchen and asked, okay, which cabinet layout do you like the best? So it is definitely a built-in village.
That's such a beautiful thing. Can you think of a story from when you were young that kind of illustrates the benefits of living in a big family?
Oh, other than always having built-in playmates, I'm trying to think of how it would be different than somebody who maybe even had one sibling. I shared a room most of my childhood, probably up until ninth grade. And my sister said that she always felt guilty, the one that I shared a room with, because we would share a bed. She would sleep the farthest from the door and she would have me hold her hand at night. And I didn't know why. I just figured she wanted to hold hands. And she later told me as an adult, it was because she had so much anxiety, but she felt bad because she knew she had put me closest to the intruder if somebody was coming in. But for me, I was just falling asleep at night holding my sister's hand. Maybe in a family where you don't have as many siblings, you're in your own room. So maybe that's how it's different.
That's beautiful. It makes me think about all those big families who start like singing groups and things. Did you ever do anything like that? Like basketball team?
No, people used to joke with my dad that he had created a basketball team. That's really funny. And we actually, a lot of us played basketball. Yeah, we are musical. I will say that. So recently we had our first niece. So first person in that generation, my niece got married in October, and my daughter, two of her sisters, and my brother were a quartet that sang, and it was absolutely beautiful. I know I'm biased, but with the fact that they were family, their voices just blended beautifully. So yeah, there's definitely benefit to having that many people. You always have entertainers. At Thanksgiving, we have a talent show. And so we just decided even 10 years ago that it would be really good for our children, our generation, to give them confidence to be in front of groups, to speak in front of groups, just not have so much stage fright. So we decided to have this talent show. My husband and my sister are the host and hostess, and they put on accents. So the kids really think it's funny. They use German accents, and it's just cute to see them all come up with what they're going to do. Anything from little babies who are taking their first steps, we clap for them, to kids who want to play Mary Had a Little Lamb on the piano or jumping jacks. Anything we can think of that they are able to do, we let them do just to build their confidence.
Now that's a wonderful idea.
Yeah, and it takes a group. So we have, like you said, that built-in village. We're in the town square on Thanksgiving doing our thing.
Yeah. How many wonderful life skills is something like that building? That's so amazing. What a great thing. So when you were growing up, what kind of a student were you when you're in school?
Oh, I was super studious in the fact that I was a quick learner and had a good memory before I had children. I feel like that left me somewhat, but I was always the kid who was done first. I'm always talking a mile a minute, so it doesn't surprise me that I was always done first. But I remember teachers giving me papers to grade to keep me busy in elementary school, or task organizing, filing, whatever to keep me busy. So I was just that student. And then in college, similar, but definitely had to study more. So just somebody who I love to learn. I'm a constant learner, even now, constantly reading, constantly trying to broaden what I know.
Growth mindset. I love that.
Yes.
What did you want to be when you were small?
Really small. I think I wanted to be a marine biologist. I love dolphins. Coming into adolescence, I used to draw them all the time, and I was worried about the tuna industry, putting them in their nets.
Yes.
And as I grew, went through a couple of things, but I landed on journalism. So I went to school for writing, did the tiniest bit of stuff for a local newspaper before just finishing out. I was an executive assistant to get through school. I went to school at night. And I just went back to doing that before I had babies, because I knew that my time was coming up to have babies, and it's hard to do journalism and be in the action when you have babies.
And when did you meet your husband?
We met in 10th grade, believe it
Ooh,
or not.
can you tell the story of that?
Sure. We were super small school, and it was private, like a parochial school, a Christian school. And he was the new boy in a very small class. So I noticed him at first, but I was quote unquote dating somebody else. I don't know if you can really date in 10th grade, but by the end of that year, though, we were hanging out pretty heavily. And then a friend of ours helped define our relationship by saying, hey, can I hang out with you as a third party? But made himself a third wheel, which was fine. We loved him. And he actually was there when Henry proposed to me, and he was in our wedding. So yeah, just through friendship, we both like basketball. We'd go to the Y and work out and lift weights, and yeah, it just formed into a relationship.
That kind of organic evolution in a relationship is very, I think it builds a bond that really is something that helps you through the tough times, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think it gives you a chance to develop the relationship outside of the pressures of romanticism and doing
Yeah.
things right and saying the right thing. And certainly we were working out at a YMCA. I was like not looking my cutest all the time. For sure, it takes the pressure off to let you get to know one another.
Very nice story. So when you were little, I'm curious always about people's foundational belief systems and the kind of values that they develop. And I'm wondering about what kind of things maybe that you used to believe when you were small that you no longer believe now that you're an adult.
Oh my goodness, I've never thought of this question. I was raised in a conservative Christian household, and I still hold many of those values. I think maybe some eye opening things about God. My family, my parents, I think a lot of our parents' generation looked like this, but raised very militaristic and didn't make a lot of decisions on their own and weren't allowed to say no. And my grandfather would say, if you're going to be sick at home, you might as well go to work and be sick and not think about the fact that you're making everybody else sick.
Yeah.
So we just kept going no matter what, which is really, it can be resilient, but it also can be unhealthy. So just finding the balance between that as an adult. But I think what it taught me about God is that we do a lot of things on our own and we can be super independent. And as an adult, especially with Ryan's story, I think that's the biggest thing I learned through Ryan's story is that I didn't have to do everything myself, that God is in the practical details as well as the forever spiritual ones. He wants to meet you every day where you are. And that was life-changing for me, really life-changing.
I'm taking this quote from your book. You say that there's nothing easy about realizing that God isn't Santa Claus.
Yeah.
What did you mean by that?
Yeah, I think a lot of people have this idea that God is somebody you go to and you pray for the things you want, and he's going to give them to you if you are good. And if you are bad, he's not going to give them to you. So why even ask for them? I think there's a lot of guilt associated with that relationship, that back and forth, and maybe a misunderstanding about prayer. And that was something I had known even younger. Just there's some trauma in my childhood. So I always had this balance of knowing that bad things could happen to somebody who believed in God and that God was separate from those things. But I'm not sure that everybody knows that or understands that until they're older, because everybody has the bad things happen, right? I am not the only one out there with a magnificent story. So that myth, I think, gets broken down a lot in adulthood or even adolescence. That, yeah, God is not somebody that you go to and you have a big checkoff list. It's a relationship. And yes, he guides you, he sustains you, but a lot of times it's not the way you want. Prayer is to change us, not to change God. And so that relationship is not transactional. But I think when you release that idea, I think a lot of people are afraid of not asking for all of those things because they want them. Of course, I'm human. I want them too. But when you release the idea of it being transactional, you realize that God is giving you what you need and that it's much better than anything you could imagine.
And I love the idea that you alluded to the idea that we have free will.
Mm-hmm.
And you hear a lot of people who talk about manifestation and things like this using the term co-creation. How do you feel about that?
I don't do a lot of manifestation, I think, the way that you're talking about it, but I do think that neuroscience is real. And I think that manifestation a lot is based in science, which I think some people don't understand. And again, I haven't studied it completely, so I don't want to misspeak. Somebody else can tell me if I'm wrong. But what we do know and what I believe is that God created our brains. And when you put something in your brain and you're thinking about it every day, your brain is motivated to do that. You notice things about that. You want a red truck, you suddenly see all the red trucks, all of that stuff. So I do think that the brain is a really adaptive, amazing tool that we are just coming into terms with. There are verses in the Bible talking about taking your thoughts captive. I think of CBT when I think of taking our thoughts captive, thinking what is good and pure and honest and of good report. Thinking about positive things impacts our mental health. I multiple verses that talk about the brain and what we should be doing that science tells us works for us. So when I hear about these things like manifestation or co-creating, if you want to say, I think we're just jumping on board with the creator. Like I've made this tool for you and you're just learning how to use it. And I think it's exciting. I think it's really exciting.
I agree. It's so exciting. There's some wonderful, more mainstream advances in understanding the brain, or at least attempting to understand the brain. I think there's so much that we just don't know and may never know
Right.
about what the brain actually is and what it's capable of. But yes, I love that explanation. That was a really great way of putting it into words. I'm still working on my understanding of that process as well. But I loved what you said about that. It's not like you're just going to ask God for something, and if you're good, you're going to get it, because we know that things come to you in different ways, often unexpected ways. And we also know that good things can happen to bad people and bad things can happen to good people. And that's the way life works. Do you think there was anything in your upbringing that prepared you for the role that you're playing now?
The role you mean as a mother?
As a mother to a child who was born with this very difficult health situation?
That's really interesting too. I had never thought about that before, but yes, I do think so. So my grandmother, my dad's side, she had three children, three sons, but two of them, the first and the third, were born deaf. So they look back in the family. We can't find anything in our bloodline. My dad's obviously hearing. None of my siblings have had any children with hearing issues. My deaf uncles would naturally possibly have some if they pass that along, but both of them have had hearing children and deaf children. I watched my grandmother, and I don't want to take too much time on this, but the idea is when they were born, these children were sent to an institution because sign language was not acceptable mainstream. So if you're walking around and you see somebody using sign language, that was not something that was condoned. They wanted these children to be able to speak and have language, and this understanding that language is only spoken, which of course we know body language. There's books on how to read somebody's body language. Obviously there's language that's not spoken. So she was really on the forefront. She dropped her son off in Texas. She dropped him off at the institution, the school, where they would board from as young as 2, 3, 4. He was going when he was 4. She was bawling her eyes out to leave him, but she witnessed a father and a father and daughter, talking with their hands. And she could tell they were angry. They were in an argument. And she latched onto the fact that they were communicating not with words. And she thought, that's what I want for me and my children. And so she went on a quest to learn American Sign Language, taught it to her children. But I think for me, just hearing those stories and how resilient she was and watching her throughout her life become a sign language interpreter and just minister to families with deaf kids, it changed their lives. It changed our lives as a family. I know American Sign Language. My kids know a little bit here and there. My oldest daughter the most. Some of my siblings know it. Just I could communicate with my aunts and uncles because it's something my grandmother decided. So that's fabulous. Thank you. I never, ever realized that example. Yeah.
So amazing. I love it when people make connections like that also, but the fact that the patterns that exist in our stories are really incredible. And these things are there at different levels for everyone. And it just takes some thought to go back in there and make some connections, connecting the dots, right? So interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Ryan. People can go and purchase your book, Showing Heart, to read your full story. But just to give us a little overview of what exactly was the medical condition that you were dealing with, because I think when people are listening, they're going to be most curious about the idea of a human being whose heart has developed outside of the chest. What does that actually look like?
Sure. So the medical term would be Ectopia Cordis, and it's just Latin for the heart being out of place. And that can happen in multiple ways. So it doesn't have to be protruding out of the chest. It can be up in the throat. It can be somewhere else in the chest cavity. For Ryan, it is literally like where his sternum would be between his Adam's apple and his ribs, I guess you would say. And it looks to me like you take half a tennis ball or maybe even half a walnut. When he was a baby, it was much smaller. And you placed it on top of his chest, but you could see it beating, unlike a walnut or a tennis ball that's stationary. we can look and we can see his heart beating. And if you know him and you look at his shirt when he's just standing around, you can see that his shirt is moving. Yeah, so that was really different for us. These babies are about 1 in 8 million births. And that was something that I really pushed the fetal, what do they call it? Maternal fetal specialist. Thank you. They kept saying to me, you need to terminate because this baby's never going to live. And I said, how many of these statistics are based on the babies that you've terminated, or how many of these are mothers who have tried? And the doctor just shook his head and said, these are babies we've terminated. And I said, then you cannot give me any statistics for what is going to happen with my child. And that's why we ended up going forward with the pregnancy. Doesn't mean it was easy or that it was an easy road, but I didn't want to take statistics that were based on human failing, or I don't even want to term it that, but human intervention to make my medical decisions.
Yeah, because you just didn't know.
Just didn't know. I was like, this is anybody's ball game at this point then.
And why couldn't it work out?
That was exactly my point. And I don't know where your questions are going to lead us today. One of my first philosophies is that bad things happen, but that doesn't mean that we give up. The conversation with the doctor was, this baby's going to have a terrible life if it lives. It's not going to live very long. You're going to go through heartache. And my point was, I'm going to go through heartache, whether this baby lives or dies, because I now know I have this baby in me. I will lose it if we terminate. I will most likely lose it if we keep going. It's not about trying to make this comfortable for me. This is already an uncomfortable, terrible situation. And I'm not the only woman to have ever faced this. There's many women who are sitting in doctors' offices having this news, and it's devastating news. It's absolutely devastating news. Trying to work toward comfort, I think, was the doctor's wish. And I understand that doctors want to do the least harm they can. So I understand from his perspective. But from my perspective, and how I've been since a child, was if you put a wall in front of me, I'm going to find a way to get over it or around it or through it. Just the fact that Ryan had this medical diagnosis was not something that I wanted to sway me on whether I was going to terminate or not. And I will say, and I say this in my book, I went home from that doctor's appointment expecting to miscarriage. So they told me the baby would miscarriage. And I fully expected that.
But it didn't happen.
It did not happen. That's right.
No. You took the baby to a certain point in the pregnancy. And then what happened?
So at a certain point in the pregnancy, around 24, 25 weeks, they started saying to me, so what would happen is I would go in every week or two to have a heartbeat check on the baby, just to make sure that if the baby had passed, it wasn't staying inside of me, making me sick, all of that kind of stuff. So at some point, I think it was 24, 25 weeks, my OB said to me, hey, at this point, the baby could possibly survive with a pediatric doctor. If you were to give birth, if you want, we can send you to a pediatric cardiologist. And I said, sure, if I'm going to try to have this baby, I want to be the most educated I can. I want to know what we can, have a plan. We visited Children's National down in DC and met with a fetal cardiologist, and she was great. She looked and she said, this is not common. We've never taken on a baby like this before. We can tell you that there are other hospitals that have, and specifically one who had done 10 babies with Ectopia Cordis, and 6 of them had died within 2 weeks. But she said, I'm looking at his heart function, which Ryan also has a heart defect. So at the time we saw her, they didn't think he had all of his valves and everything that he needed to have, like specifically an aorta. But when we went to see her, she said, no, he has an aortic trunk, but his pulmonary arteries are really little. They can't see them, but I can see them. They're just really stretched thin and small. I think there's a chance if we can tackle the Ectopia Cordis that we can help you with his heart. So if you're willing to try, I'm willing to try. And so Henry and I said, yep, we'll keep coming to see you until we can't. So that's what we did.
The thing that's coming to my mind as I hear you telling your story is the idea that, first of all, it wasn't your decision to make as to what to do with the pregnancy. You felt it wasn't your decision to make. And you just continued to look at the next right step as you went through the journey. You didn't know where it was going to lead. And this is relatable in all kinds of situations. Yours is a very extreme situation, but even in the simplest of situations, if we could just allow ourselves to not make a rash decision, just keep going and not worry about where you're going to end up, to know that you're not going to be able to see it all at the end point, but to take the next right step as you go along, and that those things will be revealed to you as they were for you.
Absolutely. You can apply this to, like you said, almost anything you face. And so I think the first important thing that I talked about was embracing hard, understanding that hard is coming and that we shouldn't be shocked by it. It should not take us unaware. We shouldn't be, a lot of times we have the expectation that life is going to be amazing and then we're disappointed when it's not. And we certainly can be disappointed, but understanding that's there to grow us, to mature us, to teach us something. I think that second step is what you're alluding to now, and that's accepting reality. In the counseling world, we would call that radical acceptance. I call it accepting reality. And I think what I don't do, and people ask me about this all the time, like, how do you keep going? And I think what I don't do is spend a lot of energy fighting what I want. I spend a lot of energy accepting what I have and then asking myself, what next? I just see that over and over in life when I'm hit with something, what next? And I say this to my kids all the time. Like you said, it can be something simple. And it's a great example. This morning, I'm working with my 10-year-old daughter. She's very emotional and hitting adolescence. And she had on this beautiful outfit. It was a new outfit that we found over the weekend. She wanted to wear it today. And I reminded her that she was signed up for basketball after school, which meant she either had to take an outfit to change into or she had to change her outfit for school. She was super disappointed and she's crying and she's flailing all over the place. And I said, hey, Piper, this is a great chance to practice accepting what we can't change. So you have two options. Let's move to the what now. So I gave her some time to be disappointed about the fact that she wanted to look pretty for school.
Yeah.
And then she chose what she was going to do. But again, I just say to them, you're going to waste a lot of energy if you don't come to that radical acceptance quickly. And I think a lot of people do. They just keep saying, how could I make this? Could I change the answer? Could I change the outcome? Could I change what's happening? Often the answer is no. And we have to decide what's next. And that, I think, is that growth mindset. If I open up that I'm in this box of what has to happen, and now I'm mad and using all this energy at night figuring out how to fix it or change it. And it's no, once you open the ends of that box and you get this long tunnel of no, what now? Then you can say, okay, this isn't going to work, but this might work, and this might work, and this might work, and this might work. Maybe I hate three of them. Maybe I like the fourth option. So just keep thinking about, what can I do? I can't change this. What can I do to move forward or through this?
That is so profound. And the story you just told with your daughter is something obviously many people will be able to relate to that. I love that you gave her the kind of reality. That's a very clear hallmark of a growth mindset. I just finished the book Mindset. And that's a wonderful example of parenting through a growth mindset, is to just let them see what strategies can we use now to move forward, to learn from this, to grow. And I love your whole very simple question, what now? That's a beautiful technique for people to adopt. What now? What's the next thing?
Yeah.
So nice. You can't control everything, but you can decide what's next.
Yeah. And I will tell you, she still went to school crying. So she's still learning. And I'm hoping my mom just said speaking truth, but the answer doesn't always come right away. And I think the hard part is in the waiting, especially if it's something devastating, a diagnosis or loss of job, loss of person, whatever it is. The excruciating part is waiting for the right next step. But I think accepting reality helps us open ourselves to that next step.
Yeah. Yeah. And patience is a part of growth. The butterfly does not emerge from the chrysalis overnight.
Right. Yep.
And I think there's a reason for that. There's a divine reason for that time that we need to learn and to grow, and that all living things and even other things, maybe even non-living things, need. So interesting. Wow. All right. Beautiful. All right. Back to Ryan. So I was trying to think about what would I be curious about if I were listening to Ryan's story. And also, I want people to know that you do have some photographs of Ryan on your website if they're interested in seeing what he looked like as a baby. And so how do you protect him from harm, protect his heart from harm?
Yeah, we get this question a lot. I even get it from the school. So The surgeons and cardiologists are adamant that he's pretty resilient. When I was taking him home for the first time, I wanted to know, what if I step on the brakes really hard and his 5-point harness goes against his chest? Is that going to make his heart stop? And they just assured me that the heart is one of the strongest muscles in the body, and it can take a lot of wear and tear, or I should just say bumping up against. So we don't protect him strongly. We did have the OTs wanted him to come home. We called it a turtle shell. So it is just, I think of it like a Roman gladiator plastic shield, hard plastic shield that he would wear and strap to his torso. And we have continued to get him one as he grows to take in for gym class. His elementary school kind of wanted him to have it on the playground. But honestly, he wasn't really falling that much. You think about when you fall, most often you put out your wrist. You're not falling straight on your chest.
Mm-hmm.
Very few times has he ever done that. So we just are casually cautious is what I call it. I'm probably one of the only mothers on earth who ever said, stop touching your brother's heart, or be careful, don't hit him in the heart. Things like that when the kids were little, wrestling. But we really try to have the most normal upbringing that we can for him. It's not normal at all. Honestly, he has a lot going on, but we have tried to make it the most normal.
You mentioned that there are some things that are not, quote, normal. So can you tell us one of the most challenging things about dealing with Ryan's condition?
I think the unknown is the hardest, which actually has nothing to do with how we treat him day to day. But Ryan, his heart, his structure is somewhat rebuilt just when he was a baby. So most of the time, these kids, when they are born, their heart is exposed to air. And that's one of the reasons they die so early is they get a heart infection, which just germs get on there and they have a heart infection. When Ryan was born, there was a membrane over his heart. So it wasn't exactly skin. There were no blood vessels to it. The plastic surgeon was really skeptical to leave it there long term. So they grew him skin in his first year. And I think it was about September of that year. So he was about 6 or 7 months. They finally ended up taking that skin, closing it over his heart and suturing him up, zipping him up. And that gave him skin over his heart that's healthy and vibrant and has blood cells and all that stuff. What then we did was attack the heart and the heart defect itself. And he has hypoplastic right heart syndrome. But not only that, he just has all these anomalies with his heart. This is a lot of medical information, but like his pulmonary arteries are really tiny, which means that he doesn't get huge blood flow at one time into his lungs, into his heart. That makes high pressures in his heart, high pressures in his lungs, and his lungs primarily. And we even recently in the last 3 years, he has had issues with his lungs bleeding. And so for us, the unknown is that long term, his body is suffering because it is compromised. So even though his heart had all these rewirings as a young child, he had 2 surgeries to help with that. Now we know that his lungs are even more compromised than we thought. And so we are working with pulmonologists and specialists to deal with that. But those things, when you have vessels that burst open in your lungs and you're bleeding, that's something you bleed out from, right? The more this happens, the more we worry that there will be a fatal incident. So we're, again, attacking it and have a plan. But when you have a child who has a chronic medical diagnosis, which there are so many families out there, so many different conditions, so many different autoimmune conditions, so many different cancers, we probably couldn't even name them all in an hour. There are many families who are facing the fact that their kids are going to specialists on a regular basis. We're getting back in the territory with Ryan of having multiple doctor's appointments a month.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's not normal. Maybe it's typical for a family that has a child with some sort of disorder, but even to go 4 or 5 times a month for testing, that's a lot. To go get blood draws multiple times a year, that's a lot. I remember when Ryan first came home, especially when he first came home, we were going and getting blood draws once or twice a week. I can't even remember now, but we were probably at the doctor's office up to 4 times a week. And I remember my friend saying, how's it going? And I'm like, great, we're home. And she's like, Leighann, most people don't go 4 times a week to the doctor. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I was so used to going to the hospital. That was just normal for us. But yeah, it's not that normal. And he had a lot of years where he was stable, and he's still stable-ish right now. But there are a lot of doctor's appointments. There's a lot of medications. There's a lot of things in my head that are medical, and I've never been to medical school, so much that sometimes when I'm talking to a doctor or nurse, they ask me if I have a medical background. And that's what it is, because as mothers, like we said all the way back in the beginning, you're nurturing a child under your care, and you have to adapt and know what's going on with your kid. And that's what we do. We research. We have the internet at our fingertips now, and we're reading. So
Every mother has a unique job. Why do you think that Ryan chose you to be his mother?
oh, that's a great question. I think from my background, I would say that God chose me as his mother. And I don't know why God chose me. Some people say, oh, he chose you because you're strong. And that goes back to that independent things in my own might and my own power. And I would say that God does not choose people to allow bad things to happen because they are strong. I think it's because he's strong and he wants us to rely on him and see his power. So maybe I needed a breaking there. I'm not sure. Again, super independent in my childhood. And Ryan really broke me of that. And I had to rely completely on God for everything. And I don't think that's a punishment. I think that's a gift. And again, when we can accept reality and see our what now, it's what now. I'm crying out for help because I just need somebody to cook me dinner. And I know it does sound like Santa Claus, but dinner has shown up when I pray for it. It just, God gives us what we need. He gives us what we need. And I needed to learn that lesson.
Yeah. Because Ryan has a special heart, do you ever notice anything special about him? Is he here to teach people something?
Is he here to teach people something? I think that we are all here to teach people something, but Ryan in particular, what he really excels at is it's socially. He was in the hospital. He constantly had people coming and going. He waved at his speech therapist the first time he saw her as an 11-month-old. And she just couldn't believe that a baby had just waved at her who had been sedated for multiple months of his first year. That shouldn't be happening. And I'm like, he has so many people wave at him. And I think that just conditioned him to be super friendly with children, super friendly with adults. People always comment, even now as he's older, people will say, there is something special about your son. I don't know what it is about his spirit, but I am drawn to him. His smile is a huge Pepsodent smile. Again, somebody else named it that, not me. That brightens up a room. He just leaks love. It just comes out of him and people feel good around him.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes I think people like that are angels.
Or have something, right? There's something spiritual going on.
Something we just don't understand.
Believe me, he's no angel. He's all boy.
Does he ever take advantage of his condition?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Are you kidding? For sure. He works the system. He was pretty babied and had dexterity. He was behind with all those first milestones because he was sedated and laying in a bed for so long. He wasn't able to move around, wasn't able to grasp things and all that stuff. They say that kids, when they're in the NICU, or in his case, it was called a cardiac ICU, that you take off that hospital months, you take that time off of their true age. And he was there for about a year.
Okay.
So he was a year behind everybody developing, and he definitely felt and still feels that idea of people doing things for him. And so we've been working as a family, as a mom and a dad, to just teach him like, hey, you need something, get up and do it if you can do it. So if you know how to do it, get it done.
Yeah.
So yes. He has that side to him too.
That's so funny. See,
I don't blame
there's
him.
Something great about that. I know. Yeah. It's human nature.
Exactly.
How do you keep your sense of identity and your sense of self intact with this major role that you have to play?
Yeah, I think my identity comes out when I advocate for my children. I have nurses that I've known for a really long time, and they're like, yep, there you go again. I knew when I heard you with the doctor that it was going to get done. There's a story in the book about when the girls couldn't come in to see Ryan because of H1N1. Everybody's, COVID, which I get, but COVID was not my first COVID. H1N1 was really big when Ryan was little, and they weren't letting people into the hospital. So suddenly his siblings couldn't come in. I felt very torn between my kids. I knew that he was going to be there for a long time. So it was like, do I leave him or do I leave my 4-year-old and my 2-year-old? That's detrimental to both sides of that. So I advocated really hard to get them back into the hospital. And I remember calling the medical director, and one of the attendings told me that he had called down, and she said, are you really going to let this mom in? You have this whole population to worry about. And he said, oh, she's never going to get in. Or I had to get the vaccine for the girls. She'll never find the vaccine. And the doctor said, don't underestimate this mom. This mom is very capable. And I think that is something that has served me well. And it is my identity that just to repeat myself, if there's a wall, I'm going to find a way around it. And that has not gone away with having these kids, even if they're the wall. I'm taking them down. Yeah, I think that has stuck with me. I don't know, hope. Somehow I just hold on to hope no matter what. My husband said I just get knocked down, I get up again. That's a song. Yeah, I don't know. That's just innate and it's part of me. And I think that those things are really important as a mom anyway. So I'm glad they're part of my identity, but I certainly have not lost any of that.
What about self-care?
Oh,
You have time for self-care?
Yeah, this is actually important. And it's something I think, just speaking to all moms, but especially moms who are caretakers, either of their parents or their kids or somebody else. I know people who take care of siblings, but it's hard because you think there's so much to do every day. And so you go and go and go. And at some point, your body does break down. And I think with Ryan, I wasn't as aware. I was young, 31, super healthy, went around the clock, and pretty much probably at the 2.5-year mark, really felt fatigued, couldn't get out of bed. I think I had killed my adrenals. I know there's some people who don't believe in adrenal fatigue. I really do believe in it. I think I just run out of cortisol and adrenaline and couldn't get out of bed. So I learned from that, and just having subsequent things happen in our family, that you really do have to take care of your body. And the boundaries are that the to-do list is never going to get done. So we have to delegate or eliminate or streamline. That's a big thing for me. And how do I do that? And I've just learned I need time by myself in the morning. I need to work out. I need to shower. That's just me. Some people don't. I need to shower. I need to feel good about my day, get dressed. And I do spend quiet time reading and praying. And for other people that may be meditating, or I know people who read 15 minutes a day, or I don't even know. My husband plays Connections, and he plays different stimulating things on games that get his mind going. He's reading financial articles in the morning. That's kind of his, whatever it looks like for you to be able to go about your day feeling grounded. It's really important. And yes, I am doing that. There have been seasons of my life where it's much harder. When I had 3 kids, age 5 and under, and one of them medically challenged. Yeah, it was super, super hard, but it's important to find those pockets of time where you can just ground your spirit, rest your body, rest your brain.
Yeah. What's your best advice to other parents who might have a child with a challenge of whatever kind?
Accept help. Other than self-care, accept help. I have a natural village in my family, and also a lot of people who have some sort of structure around them, whether it's, for me, it's organized religion. Somebody else, it might be even just moms at school that know your kids really well, the soccer team, whatever. People are going to say, can I help you? And they're not going to know how to help. They just don't. They haven't been through it. They don't know. Maybe they've been blessed that they haven't had a tragedy yet in their family, or something where they're in crisis mode for a long time, and they don't know what to do for you, and you're having a hard time thinking. Maybe take a list. I actually have a list on my website of things that people can do for families in crisis. It involves a lot with, don't say, I'm here to help you. Say, can I come do your laundry? Can I take your kids for a couple of hours? Can I bring you a meal? Meals are a lot. I know I just switched from talking to the mom who has a sick kid to the mom who doesn't, who's helping out, but not having the mental energy that we spend on creating a menu, going and getting it from the grocery store, and actually making it, a lot of mental energy. So for a mom who's in crisis, if somebody can do that for them or set up a meal train, it's huge. It's huge. So yeah, accept help, ask for what you need. Don't be embarrassed. Everybody needs help at some point in their lives. And what I've learned is now when I turn around and see somebody else in crisis, I'm one of the first ones saying, do you need a meal? Do you need somebody to take your kid home after that activity? Or do they want to come for a play date or whatever? Because I'm so attuned to what it felt like to not have the energy. And it was like, I can decide to do this or to take care of my person. And my person's so important to me. But this stuff is really starting to bother me because the rest of my family needs this stuff. Yeah, just accepting that help and asking for help.
I love the idea of making a list of things that you would like help with. I think everyone can do that. Just all the things looking around your house that you just would love a hand with, make a list. And if someone asks you, can I help you with something? You'll have a list. And don't be afraid to use it.
Yeah, for sure.
But yes, making dinner and making meals, it's relentless. You don't even think of it as such a big deal, but it really is. It's something that's ongoing. You have to do it all the time. And to have nutritious food in your life is very important because you need to nourish yourself. And a lot of times when people are in those situations, they fall back on fast food and things that are causing more damage.
Absolutely.
So that's a great one. Okay. So what would you say are the biggest lessons that you've learned in this life?
Oh my goodness. So I gave you the first two, embracing hard and accepting reality. I think the last two that I would add to that is speak truth and embrace hope. So it's an acronym that I've come up with. It's EASE. So life is already hard. Why make it harder? Live a life of ease. I just came up with that. So embrace hard, accept reality, speak truth, embrace hope. So we would just add those on the end. So once you have accepted reality, I really think you need to move into speaking truth. And that kind of goes to that closed box idea of there's a message I'm telling myself keeping me in this box. Probably not true. So either subconsciously or consciously choosing to believe a certain thing about my life. If I can open up that box to that growth mindset and be like, no, what is the truth here? I'm in a difficult situation, but I can still do this, or I can still do this. Or I'm just grateful to have breath today. I'm grateful to see my person again today. Any of those things that we can speak truth, little or large, are really helpful to then embrace hope, because hope just keeps us going. And for me, that's the hope that I'm doing the right thing. But also, again, just back to my faith. I don't know what other people would put in place of that. But just the idea that there's something bigger. I am part of a huge tapestry. I'm just one little thread of it. And that I can't see the full picture, and I don't know how this is going to help me or help others in the future and how I'm going to grow from it. And I think that gives us hope when we know there is a purpose for what's happening.
Yeah, a lot of people use that analogy of the tapestry, and a lot of people who have had near-death experiences or other spiritual or religious experiences talk about that, like seeing in some other realm your actual thread, your role. And not knowing that's something we can't normally see, but we know we are playing a part. Every person is playing a part somehow.
Yep.
And it's very beautiful when you can look at life that way. You're part of something very big and mysterious and magical and beautiful.
Yeah, and I think it takes the focus off of me. And I think that when we do, even self-care, when it goes over into self-indulgence, we become self-centered. And we just know through science that when we look toward others and that idea that we are small in a big picture, somehow that helps our brain, somehow that helps our spirit, somehow that grounds us. So yeah, I think it's really important.
It's comforting.
Yeah.
What about your blessings? What are your biggest blessings?
Oh, say more words about that, how you want me to define that.
What would you say you're the most grateful for?
Oh, I am most grateful for the people that God has surrounded me with. I think that life alone is sad. And so there's a lot of loneliness going on right now. Get out and find some people. If they're not coming to you, go out, join some groups, because we cannot do life alone. It's much better in a village. And I have an amazing village.
You sure do. Thank you for sharing a little bit about your story and your village and those things that have helped to support you in your life. It's really helpful, I think, for others to be able to share stories like this, to hear your story, and to feel that they're not alone in their experiences. Thank you for being here, Leighann. It was lovely to meet you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great talking to you today.